Hello, I'm Jerry Ford. I'm going to review I always say I'm going to review, because that's what I am. I'm a reviewer. I'm going to read a story out of this book here called The Scary States of America. 50 Weird and Terrifying Stories, one from each state, based on true events, by Michael Teitelbaum. This is going to be New Hampshire that I'm going to read about. All right. So, when I hear similar paranormal tales from more than one place, it always makes me suspicious. I assume they must just be urban legends. Some of these stories involve women who, for a variety of reasons, ranging from insanity to unrequited love to hateful fathers, murder their children and toss them off a bridge. It is claimed that years later, the women's mournful cries can still be heard on the bridges at night. But the story that my buddy Bizarro Boy of Nashua, New Hampshire, sent me made me stop and consider what I had once believed were simply tall tales. Hey, Spectre, I have a story for you that is not an urban legend. It's the real paranormal deal. Paranormal deal. In parentheses, right up your alley. Before Halloween last year, I thought our town ghost story was just that, a story. But after what happened to me and my girlfriend Tiffany, I know it's true. If I recall correctly from my Cub Scout campfire days, a long time ago, there lived in my hometown a poor widow with 2 small children. One day, she met and fell in love with a very wealthy man. She desperately wanted to marry him, but she wouldn't have her. But he wouldn't have her because he hated children. He's a child hater. Devastated, the woman took her kids to a bridge over a river just outside the city. Crazy with grief, she stabbed her own children to death and then tossed their dead bodies into the river. Oh my gosh. That kind of crap happens these days, I tell you. Crazy. It just happened to be October 31st. She then went back to the man's house to ask if they could be together now. When he saw the woman standing there in her blood-soaked yellow dress, he was disgusted. The man told her to leave and never return. She shrieked in horror at the realization of what she had done. Driven to madness, she raced back to the river, wailing and tearing clumps of hair from her head. She dived into the water again and again, but could not find no trace of her children. Finally, she climbed the bridge, stabbed herself in the stomach, and jumped into the river at its deepest point. Now it is said that when you cross the bridge at night, you can hear the wailing of the mother, sometimes mournful, sometimes hysterical, but always terrifying. Tiffany and I joked about the over-the-top story as we drove onto the bridge last Halloween on our way to our friend Dan's party. His parents were away and the whole school was going. I was dressed as a superhero, complete with cape, tights, boots, and an equipment belt loaded with gadgets and tools. In parentheses, yes, I am an unapologetic comic book geek. Tiffany dressed up like a giant red crayon, wearing a red dress, red tights, red boots, and a cone made out of construction paper on her head. I stopped the car in the middle of the bridge and turned off the headlights. "What are you doing?" Tiffany asked as I shut off the engine and I rolled down our windows. "It is Halloween, you know," I replied in a spooky voice. "The anniversary of the night that woman killed her kids and threw them off this bridge." "Oh. Could you try not to be a total geek for 5 minutes, Kevin?" Tiffany asked, in parentheses, "By the way, Spectre, Kevin is my real name, and yes, Tiffany totally digs me. I don't want to be late to Dan's." She was cut off by an unearthly howl that made the hair on the back of my neck that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. "Give me a break," Tiffany moaned. "It's Halloween. You know, Mike and Booger, or whoever, are down there trying to scare people. They know everyone's going to Dan's party, and you can't get there without passing over this bridge. Then let's go see if we can scare them back," I said excitedly, jumping out of the car before Tiffany could protest. I wasn't quite sure how the sight of a superhero and a red crayon was going to scare the guys, but Tiffany followed me and we made our way down the embankment. I pulled a flashlight from my costume's equipment belt and aimed the beam at the area under the bridge. I couldn't see anyone, but we heard the painful, gut-wrenching howl again. This time it was obviously coming from the river. I focused the flashlight on the water's surface, which began to bubble furiously. As the water churned, it turned bright red, like someone was pumping blood from beneath the surface. Then a woman's head appeared, rising from the center of the roiling crimson circle. When the woman's body was completely out of the water, the bubbling stopped. The woman floated, hovering just above the river's surface. Her yellow dress was covered in blood, which poured from her midsection and dripped into the river. "Bravo, Booger! You have outdone yourself this year, my man. This blows away the hangman stunt you pulled on Wayne's lawn last year," I shouted, looking around for the guys. I just want to know how one of you guys squeezed into that dress," Tiffany added, giggling. "Yee!" It says, "Why, I," shrieked the hovering figure. That was the woman that's floating in the water, okay. Tearing at her hair as blood flowed freely down the front of her dress. "Okay, now this is just freaky," Tiffany whispered as she grasped my arm. We watched a second longer. The woman sure didn't look like any of the guys. "Let's go, Kev. I'm not laughing anymore." The figure shrieked again, and that was it for Tiffany. My giant red crayon dashed back up the embankment. I followed her, training my flashlight ahead of us. "What about the rest of the show?" I yelled as I chased her back up to the bridge. "We have to congratulate Boog." I stopped short and grabbed Tiffany close to me. Standing in the middle of the bridge was the bleeding woman. Oh gosh, she's up there already. Ooh. She leaned over the railing, screeching in pain while tearing out clumps of her hair and tossing them into the water below. "How could she have gotten up here so fast?" Tiffany asked, trembling. "She's right near our car." I approached the crying woman slowly. "Hey, lady, is this a joke? Did Mike put you up to this?" She didn't seem to notice me. As I drew nearer, she suddenly turned toward me. As she raised her hand over her head, I saw a bloody knife clutched in her bony fingers. This was no joke. "Yee!" she shrieked, unleashing a sound that literally knocked me off my feet. I fell hard onto the bridge's roadway. I take a lot of beatings in wrestling practice, but that shriek felt like a total body slam. "Kevin!" Tiffany yelled in terror, racing to my side. "Let's get out of here!" I shouted, scrambling to my feet. I grabbed Tiffany's hand and started sprinting down the road, but when I glanced over my shoulder, I saw that the woman was gone. "Where did she go?" I asked nervously as we stopped running. "I don't know," Tiffany panted, clutching my arm. I stumbled to the railing and shined my light down into the river. There was no sign of the woman, no blood in the water. I looked down at the road where she had been standing. No blood, no puddle, no evidence that the wailing woman had ever existed. "Let's just go," Tiffany said, helping me back to the car. "I'll drive." My whole right side was in wicked pain, so I didn't argue. Or she said, "I'll drive." Okay. After helping me settle into the passenger seat, Tiffany slipped behind the wheel and turned the key in the ignition. Nothing happened. Why won't the car start? Tiffany cried, turning the key again and again. The car coughed and sputtered but refused to start up. I glanced into the rearview mirror. The blood-soaked apparition had returned and now strode menacingly toward the car, her scarlet knife raised high. "She's back!" I yelled. "Babe, we gotta get out of here." Tiffany frantically tried again to start the car. Thump. Tiffany and I spun around to discover that the woman had thrown her body against the back window of my car. Her arms spread wide, her twisted face pressed against the glass. She lifted herself and moved to the back door on the passenger side. "She's coming in," Tiffany cried. Pounding the gas pedal with her foot, the engine grumbled, sputtered, and then finally started. The bloody woman shoved her knife through the open back window, its red blade passing just inches from my head. "Go now!" I shouted. Tiffany floored it, and the car sped off with a piercing squeal. She looked terrified as we raced off the bridge. "Baby, are you okay?" she asked shakily. "That thing almost drove her blade into your skull. Should we call the police or something?" I sat there, bathed in cold sweat. I could only concentrate on slowing my heartbeat. It was going a mile a minute. "Let's just get to the party so we can forget it. If we called the police, they'd ask us where we were going in our costumes. I don't want to get Dan in trouble." We arrived at Dan's party about 10 minutes later. The place was packed and people spilled out onto the front lawn. "Hey, sweet costumes," Dan said as we staggered through the front door, trying to look normal. He was dressed like a pirate, complete with a hat, a puffy shirt, and a fake parrot on his shoulder. "What are you, Tiff, a crayon?" "Yeah," Tiffany replied, forcing a smile and adjusting her paper cone. We'd begun to head to the kitchen when Tiffany stopped. "It's her," she gasped, grabbing my arm. Standing in line for the bathroom was a girl wearing a bloody yellow dress. Her face was covered in white makeup, her hair teased into random clumps. "Thank God somebody gets my costume," said the girl, smiling at us. That's her. That's the girl was dressed up like that woman, and she heard them talking about her costume. Said the girl, smiling at us. "I thought I was being so original going as the ghost of the bridge lady." "Oh, you stupid idiot," Tiffany yelled. "You almost drove a knife into my boyfriend's head." "Oh, she thought she was the girl on the bridge, or the woman on the bridge, but in a costume, see?" What are you talking about?" the girl replied. "Is this a joke? I've never seen you in my life." "You were just at the bridge, and you know it. Did Booger and Mike put you up to this?" Tiffany shouted. "I've been here for over an hour," the girl shouted back, "and I don't hang out with people named Booger." The girl stormed off into the living room. Dan walked over. "Hey, what just happened there?" I filled Dan in on the terrifying ride over, but he looked a little skeptical. "Dude, that was my friend, Andrea," Dan explained. "She was one of the first people to get here tonight. If this happened to you like 10 minutes ago, it wasn't her. She was most definitely here. Also, Mitch, Zach, Booger, and Mike got nailed by the cops earlier for egging people's cars. Rich told me they've been at the police station all night. Their parents won't bail them out this time." I believed Dan. When Tiffany was screaming bloody murder at Andrea, I noticed her dress. It was yellow, but the fake blood was crusty, and the dress itself was dry. I apologized to Dan and Tiffany, and I went outside. "I just did a good job making a fool of myself," Tiffany said as we leaned against my car. "Hey, it's okay. And we still don't know who the freak on the bridge was. I mean, what kind of lunatic thinks it's funny to..." I stopped short. My heart began racing as goosebumps slowly crept over my body. I pointed at the back seat of my car. There, Plunged in the center of a spreading crimson pool was the bloody knife of the woman on the bridge. Oh my gosh. The bloody woman left her bloody knife. Well, what a souvenir that'd be, huh? Okay. There you go. New Hampshire. If you like paranormal type stuff, you collect the books like that. And this seems like a book that you would be interested in. Excuse me. Go purchase you one for your collection. It helps the authors. In this case, it helps Michael Teitelbaum to be able to make more books. You know, helps them out. And they appreciate it. And I thank you all for watching. I appreciate that. And we will see you on the next one.